Hello, dear students, and welcome back. This is the second part of the lesson on moon landing. I hope you liked the first part. In today's lesson, my colleague Livia and I will be your virtual teachers. She'll join us just a couple of slides later. U današnjoj lekciji učenici će primjenjivati prikladni idiom s obzirom na kontekst te analizirati proces istraživačkog zadatka u govoru. For this lesson, you'll need just regular stuff, your notebook or a piece of paper, a pen or a pencil, and your smartphone or laptop, personal computer connected to the internet. Before we start the lesson, I have to say we really enjoyed preparing this one, and we hope you'll have fun.
Hello, dear students. My name is Livia, and I am your co-teacher today in this lesson. Are you ready to start the serious work? Here is a first simple task for you. Please divide a page in your notebook into 3 columns. These 3 columns make a KWL chart. This is the chart that we will use throughout the lesson, and by the end of the lesson, you will have a useful tool to revise all that was mentioned in the lesson. The columns are I know, I would like to know, and I have learned. Now, please fill in the first column. Write down all that you know about moon landing. Think about what was mentioned in the previous lesson.
In case you don't know where to start from, here are some words and terms that might help you remember and organize all the things you've learned so far. They are just a sort of reminder. Black, eagle, splashdown, hatch, spice rice, Nixon, JFK, Columbia, fuel alarm, and Cold War. And now it's time to fill in the second column. I'm sure there are more things you would like to know about moon landing. Please write them down in this table. It's the second column of your KWL chart. Please pause the video and fill it in. In the previous lesson, I promised you some fun facts related to the 1969 mission. Do you know what a fun fact is? Do you like fun facts? I like them very much. Fun facts are entertaining or interesting pieces of information and most often are introduced with the words, "Did you know?" Did you know that during the mission, Armstrong's average heart rate was incredibly low, 71 beats per minute? As the 2 astronauts descended towards the moon's surface, Armstrong's heart rate rose to 110 beats per minute, still ridiculously low for a man orbiting the moon. But the moment the alarm system blared, indicating they were running out of fuel, it literally skyrocketed to 150 beats per minute, 80% of the maximum capacity for an average 38-year-old man. On July 5th, the crew of Apollo met with the press, asked, "Will you take personal mementos to the moon, Neil?" Armstrong answered, "If I had a choice, I would take more fuel." Look at the photo taken by Michael Collins. Armstrong and Aldrin are approaching the moon's surface and his heartbeat. Just listen to it. When it comes to beats, the moon and spice have long been a source of inspiration for many artists too, musicians and songwriters. Have you ever heard of these amazing artists and their famous pieces of work, all inspired by this miraculous celestial body? Can you match the artists and the titles? Pink Floyd, R.E.M., Frank Sinatra, Michael Jackson, Audrey Hepburn, and David Bowie. And these are the titles: The Moonwalk, Space Oddity, The Dark Side of the Moon, Moon River, Man on the Moon, and Fly Me to the Moon. Give it a try. Here is the answer key. Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon. R.E.M., Man on the Moon. Frank Sinatra, Fly Me to the Moon. Michael Jackson, The Moonwalk. Audrey Hepburn, Moon River. And David Bowie, Space Oddity. This artistic legacy is a treasure chest. It is priceless. And the duty of each generation is to add to this legacy, not just to live off it. Believe it or not, you'll have a unique opportunity to listen to the answer key.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
She's more like a beauty from a movie scene. Moon river, wider than a mile.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade.
I have to admit I really enjoyed listening to the answer key. For your homework, I'd like to ask you to listen to these songs. You'll recognize their artistic value, I'm sure. But you'll also find out some interesting pieces of information too. For example, did you know that there is no such thing as the dark side of the moon? As the moon orbits Earth, it always keeps one face towards the planet. To put it simply, we always see the same side of the moon. The permanently hidden part is properly called the far side, not the dark side. And I almost forgot to mention, one of the craters on the dark side of the moon is named after Nikola Tesla. The more I dug into the topic, the more I got to think about Michael Collins. How did he feel orbiting the moon all alone? I thought he must have felt very lonely. I'm surprised no one has ever thought of the idiom to be as lonely as Michael Collins. Perhaps it's because Collins said he wasn't lonely and that no one in mission control was yakking at him and telling him what to do. While waiting for Armstrong and Aldrin, Collins was alone in the command module and he orbited the moon 14 times. Each orbit he would spend 47 minutes on the dark side of the moon. During that time, he was unable to communicate with any human being. Just the minutes before Armstrong and Aldrin took their first steps on the lunar surface, Collins reached the far side of the moon. And he couldn't see what more than 600 million people were watching worldwide.
Getting back up to that first step. That isn't collapsed too far, but it's adequate to get back up.
Roger, we copy.
It's a pretty good little jump.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Neil, we can see you coming. Okay, I just checked. Getting back up to that first step. That isn't collapsed too far, but it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It was definitely the moment which changed the world. But as you can see, it's not just the art world that has always been fascinated by the moon. We often mention it in our everyday language. The moon has inspired many idioms. There is no better way of sounding like a native speaker than knowing how to use an idiom. Now, after you do this task, you will probably blow everybody away with your newly acquired knowledge of moon idioms. There are 6 moon idioms you have to use in context. Read the sentences or mini dialogues, they are on the next slide, and fill in the gaps with the appropriate moon idiom. Here are the idioms, there are 6 of them. Copy them into your notebooks. Love someone to the moon and back, the moon on a stick, be over the moon, once in a blue moon, bark at the moon, and the moon is made of green cheese. And here are the sentences and the answers. Now that she's married, I get to see her once in a blue moon. I gave you everything. What more do you want? The moon on a stick. I'm taking her to London for a surprise. She will be over the moon when she finds out. He said he was going to change. Yeah, and the moon is made of green cheese. I'll believe it when I see it. No matter what happens, I want you to know I love you to the moon and back. I'll ask my boss again to let me have a day off, but I think it will be like barking on the moon. And now it's time for another task. You have to explain the meaning of each of the synonyms. And the moon is made of green cheese. The most ridiculous thing imaginable, unlikely to happen. The moon on a stick. To want everything, including things you can't have. Love someone to the moon and back. To love someone deeply. Once in a blue moon. Not very often, rarely. Be over the moon. To be extremely happy and excited and bark at the moon. To make an appeal that is unlikely to change. Livia, what have you prepared for our students?
We are approaching the end of our lesson today. Before we say goodbye to each other, here is a task for you. You will do a bit of research. There are many interesting stories behind Apollo 11 mission. By now, you have also heard several fun facts. Here are some numbers, terms, and names. They are all connected to Apollo 11 mission. Please find the connection. What have they got in common? To help you with your research, we've decided to come up with steps that will make your research easier. So before you start working on this task, please go through this list of questions. Which pieces of information do you need? Where can you find them? Define the starting point of your research. Make a prediction. Make a plan for your research. During the research, make notes on the progress. These notes will be very useful for you for the last part of this task. And finally, after you have completed the task, look at the notes before the research. Are there any changes? Were your predictions right? Did you discover something new? Make notes as well. Don't forget that it's easier to start with a term that is easy to research, for example, a name. If you make a prediction, base it on your previous knowledge. Make useful notes on each term, number, and name. It will be easier to see the connections. And finally, use trustworthy sources. The final task is to prepare a debrief, like a real NASA official. In your debrief, please explain all the stages of your research in steps. What did you do at the beginning of the research? Which web pages did you use? Were they useful? Are there any surprising pieces of information that you found out during your research? Explain the reasons why. Why did you do the research in the way that you did? And finally, compare your predictions from the beginning of the research and your final result. Once you finish your debrief, please make audio recording of it and send it to your teacher. And now that you have completed all the tasks in both lessons, you can complete the third column of the chart, I have learned. Write down all that you have learned about moon landing.
So if you ask your friends why people float in space, they would probably tell you it's because there is no gravity there. But it's not true. There is gravity. It's called microgravity. And astronauts seem to be floating in space, but actually they're falling towards Earth. So why am I telling you this? It's because we had to leave out so many interesting things we wanted to mention, and we couldn't because the lesson would be too long. We hope we encouraged you to dig deeper into the topic, to search the web and just read about it. In English, of course. It would be one small step for you, but one giant leap for your education. I know you enjoy playing computer games, and I believe they are fun, especially if you play them with your friends. But don't let it be your only pastime. Open that treasure chest we have been talking about. Frank Sinatra is a great artist. David Bowie, too, my favorite. His Space Oddity is a masterpiece. You have to listen to it. Enjoy the artistic legacy previous generations left behind and remember to add to it. And I almost forgot, sit back and enjoy watching Bruce McCandless falling towards Earth. Amazing. Thank you for watching this video lesson. Bye bye.